Hey friends, Karen Pennington here. It's been a minute, a month to be exact, almost exactly a month since I've posted anything. And I started out this whole journey in March, posting 6 days a week, and then decided that I needed to take a morning with my granddaughter, who is totally worth my time. And so we went down to 5 days a week because since we called it Daily Adventures in Grace, I wanted to post daily. So I have not stopped having my daily adventures in grace. I just can't post about it every day. See, some new developments have come up. Specifically, I have been called and led to do something impossible. It was a pretty quick development. To me, it's impossible. Um, but what I was kind of saying, I'll just give you the spoiler alert. When God calls you to do something impossible, something that you are absolutely certain that you have no qualification or ability to do, and then you step forward and faith to do it anyways, then get ready for miracles. Get ready for miracles. It's okay to say, I can't do it. It's okay to say, I know I'm not qualified. Just don't let that stop you. Because if God calls you, he equips you. That's an old saying. It's pretty old. God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. But here's the other thing. Sometimes God has already equipped you in ways that you don't realize. So I have two stories that I want to talk about today that talk about that. One is mine and one is a more famous one. So December 23rd, very last day of school of me being a substitute in actually a pretty difficult area before Christmas break, December 23rd. I was excited about my break. I was going to have 1 week off, and then I was going to have 1 week where we went to St. Thomas, Virgin Islands, to a tropical area to have a much needed vacation. Well, I was excited about that. I was also stressed about how much it was going to cost because, as many of you know, because of my husband's accident with his leg, he's just now getting to where he can start work again, but he's just about to start, but he hasn't yet. And he's got to ease back into work because his leg was broken in, 400,000 different places. And on top of that, I had this call to work on my book, which actually cost more money than it brought in. So we had dwindled our resources trying to be faithful to God. I do believe this book, An Anointed Mess, is something I was called to write, whether it's ever an audience of, 200 or 300 people, or whether it's a bestseller, which is still my dream. But in the meantime, I was working substitute jobs, which don't pay. They pay basically minimum wage plus a couple cents extra a day. Literally a couple cents extra a day above minimum wage. It's just not a very good paying job. But I felt very strongly I was supposed to do this substitute thing. And at the same time, I was getting stressed, trying not to get stressed, trying to give it to God. God's always met our needs, but we need a source of income. We need a pretty steady source of income, and it needs to last a few months until Ben can work his way back into getting a full-time job, because we're getting really close to nothing in our savings, So on December 23rd, right in the middle of the day, right as I'm ready for all these breaks, excited for the rest, stressed about the money, I get a call from the substitute coordinator in my school district, who knows me because I work every day. And she asked if I would be willing to fill a gap as a regular teacher for the rest of the year, January through the end of June. Now, that's not usually something they would ask someone like me because I'm not a certified teacher. I do have a master's degree in education, but it's Christian education, so I'm not a certified public teacher. It's in an area that I know, but I'm not trained in. I'm not a Spanish teacher. I do speak Spanish pretty well, and I understand how to learn it and everything because I did well in it in high school. And so there's a couple different areas, and they had seen me do it before, and they thought I did a good job. And more importantly, there is such a teacher shortage right now. They had tried for months and months and months and months to fill this gap, and there's just no one out there. There's no one. So I'm not telling you anything that's a secret. So many different, particularly public school areas, are losing teachers. And then you have teaching has now become so much harder because of the pandemic and because of all of the stressful things that you have to do in the pandemic. Like, for instance, the middle school I'm teaching, because they're still trying to keep the kids from intermingling too much. The kids stay in the same class. We go to them. and there's no time between classes. So if the class ends at 9:35, the next class starts at 9:35, and I'm supposed to be on the other side of the school. So I got to run from one, go to the other. So instead of having that 5 or 6 minutes where you're just, you know, switching things over, getting ready for the next class, you're actually picking up your stuff and mobily moving everything to the next class. I can't explain to you how many different stressors that adds, on top of the fact that kids were home for a year. And so we weren't ready for that, so they didn't learn as well. So there's all of these things, and some people don't want to get the shot. I'm not even going to comment on whether or not to get the shot. That's between you and God. But some people don't want to get it. So some of those people are like, I'm not going to be tested every week, or I'm not going to get this. So there's just been this mass exodus of teachers and other teachers who don't want to come. And so they've tried and tried and tried and tried. And the school district did everything they were supposed to do to try to get someone, but there's just no one. So finally, kind of a Hail Mary call, they called me on December 23rd and said, hey, can you start at the beginning of the year? I'm doing the job of a teacher, so I'm being paid like a teacher, which is better than I've been paid. Still, teachers still are underpaid, but I'm happy with that. So at the same time, I got an answer to prayer, and then, just going to start. I don't know why I keep clapping. And I was asked to do something I desperately did not want to do. There was a reason I was happy being a substitute. It's not very high stress. I like being with the kids, even the kids that have difficult behaviors or difficult issues. It's one day I can just go in and relate to them. If it's that hard, I'm not there the next day anyways. Or in worst case scenario, I might be there for a week to two. But I don't worry about the lesson plans. I just do what the teacher asks me to do. And I do my best to relate to the kids. Still in ministry, still good, not a lot of stress. Not the case with being a teacher. Not the case. And I knew I was supposed to say yes. And then I was like, did I do the right thing? Well, so on top of that, the first week of the school year was supposed to be my vacation. My vacation got canceled. So instead of doing this long needed rest on a tropical island in warmth, I'm walking in snow and ice to school for this stressful job that I didn't even want to do. Now, if you're a student of mine or a coworker of mine, wait till the end of this, because it's a past tense I didn't. God's been working on me. So it was really stressful. Once again, I'm in a situation where it's a new career. I've had to do this a lot. Fortunately, I do not define my calling or my identity based on what pays my bills, because otherwise my identity would have changed probably 10 times in the past 10 years, because I worked in nonprofit for so long and did not feel led to be in ordained ministry, although I've been in ministry. Just trying to be faithful, and sometimes when you're faithful, there can be some difficulties. So I've learned a lot of careers, and so I was just, honestly, the first couple days between all of the challenges and going, I want to work on my book. I thought you called me to work on my book. I thought you called me to do these posts. I feel alive when I'm talking to people about God, when I'm studying the Bible, when I'm talking about the Bible. Now I'm teaching Spanish. Now I'm teaching Spanish to inner city kids. And I don't have time. Teachers, they have years and years of prep. And then on top of that, they have training from the school district. You get like a week of training, or at least a couple days of training, before the kids even come. You get time to set up your room. You get all of these things. You have knowledge and passion in this area. So here, I'm not qualified to do it. Here are my unqualifications. I'm not trained in this area. I rocked at Spanish in high school. And then I had one semester in college. I've kept it up. I've used it. But I couldn't translate for the United Nations, put it that way. I can teach Spanish 1 and 2. I'm not educated in this area of foreign language education. I'm not educated in public school. I'm not a certified teacher. I'm not prepared. I had no time to plan for this. I thought I was going to start on the 12th. I found out on a Thursday, I think the 30th, that I was going to start on the 3rd. So, because this trip got canceled. My trip got canceled and nobody's fault. It was sickness of someone else. I wasn't prepared. I'm not equipped. This is an area where, I don't care if I say it, foreign language is getting underfunded more and more and more. So, because it's not a core class, because people don't need it over and over again. I have textbooks, I can't use them. kids can't bring them home because they lose them. They're like, they just lose books. And I can't bring 50 textbooks around the school with me, because there's 2 different grade levels. I can't bring that many. I can't do that and walk around classrooms with 50 textbooks. So there is a list of what they should learn each week, and there are some loose resources, which I, as a Spanish teacher who know my resources, that's easy, but I'm having to either really dig through and find them or create them myself every day. I have to learn the Google Classroom, which is the online format. I have to learn to figure out what the individualized education programs are, which you always have, to figure out how to communicate with parents. I have to learn all the students, 96 students. I have to prepare the materials. I have to prepare the testing. I have to make sure, there's so much. And I'll tell you what, being a teacher for the first year, when you are called and passionate and trained and equipped in a regular environment, that's a real challenge. Try coming in the middle of the year to something that you're not trained for, you're not equipped for, and really you don't even want to do. You don't feel called to do even. Not trained, not educated, not certified, not prepared, not equipped, not even desiring to do it. And yet I'm called to do it. And I'll tell you, the first couple days beforehand and the first couple days of class, I was just so overwhelmed with all of these students. And I had to learn I have to put grades in now and all that, and I have to learn the parents. And I wept. I wept some mornings. This is why I can't post every morning. Now, in the mornings, I can't take that time to post because as a substitute, I had the rest of the day to defrag. And, I still taught the kids, but I didn't have all of these other extra things on my mind. I just taught the class, or I sat in the class and made sure the kids did their assignment and helped them if they needed it. Either way, much lower stress. And my planning period was really a free period. Now my planning period is a planning period, in addition to the time after school. So I'm like, if I sound disheveled, it's like, holy moly, how do I do this, God? And I'm going, God, I need your help. So this amazing thing is happening in my life. And this is where it is a walk of grace. Every morning I sit down and I'm like, God, I need you. Oh goodness, we always need God. But there are times when we just realize it more than others. God, I can't do this. I can't, I'm not trained for this. I'm pretty smart. I'm pretty clever. But I'm not clever enough to make up for 6 years of education, to have a master's degree in this field. These kids, some of them are really difficult. I have some of the difficult, I have some classes that usually get split up for the academic classes, or they're together for gym, but they're all together for me. And it's a combination between behaviors and extreme educational needs. I'm not saying anything, I'm not going to give specifics because you don't do that. But this is, all I have to say is I teach in an inner city school. There's going to be more needs and less funding than you need. There's going to be special educational needs. There's going to be special language needs. And it's a lot. It's a lot for anybody. It's a lot for somebody who's a veteran, who's done it. And then you add COVID, you add the fact that the kids are, now I'm just reiterating myself. So I'm just weeping and asking God, equip me, equip me, equip me. 3 weeks into it now, God's equipping me. And it's God, because it can't be my clever. If ever there's a job that I was not prepared or qualified to go into, it is this thing right here. This is like, God, it isn't. This is not like, oh, I can just learn it. So, and not even the people that teach us Spanish are qualified at this point, are really equipped for what's going on. God's equipping me. Miracles are happening. Things are getting better. I'm enjoying it. 3 weeks into it, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the students. Probably won't do it the rest of my life. Actually, in reality, I can't because I'm a placeholder right now. I'm the person that's filling the gap to get them ready for the state tests and everything else. Oh yeah, last time I took a Spanish state test was 1990. So there's another thing. But God is helping me. God is equipping me, and God has equipped me in areas that I did not even realize. There are things that are coming into my head, like creative ideas. They got to be God, because I wasn't thinking of them before. Creative ways that, okay, so kids aren't learning before the test, but they need to have the test, but half of them are out this week because of some sort of sickness or quarantine, or, but God's just giving me the ideas, and He's helping me get the work done. Is it extra work? Yeah. I got to stay after an hour or two every day. I have homework this weekend, but it's good. It's okay. But God has equipped me, and there's some other things I realized that God has equipped me for this in ways. God calls the equipped. I mean, God equips the called, but sometimes God has equipped you. Sometimes God has given you what you need before you realize it. Sometimes those things that you think are tough or trials, those are actually just training you for a higher calling somewhere else. Um, First of all, the calling and power of God. That is always it. If God is with you, that's it, right? Um, I worked with at-risk youth for over 2 decades through the Salvation Army. So that aspect of it, which is one of the most difficult parts of the job, I get them. Honestly, it's not as hard as working at the Salvation Army, because when you work with at-risk youth at a church where the parents aren't there, you have no recourse. Sometimes they just misbehave. They're not going to fail the class. They're not going to, anything like that. They're not going to get after-school detention. So there's a little bit of discipline in place in this school that wouldn't have been in the church, particularly where the parents aren't involved in the church. So there's a little bit easier, the structure. You see them 5 days a week instead of 1 day a week, So their captive audience, all these things. I'm a quick study. Do you know how many new careers I've started? I've been an insurance agent, had to learn that in 2 weeks. I was a senior editor, had to learn that within 10 months, but really within the first month or two. That was the biggest, probably, professional challenge. I had to learn how to be a quality inspector, aerospace quality inspector, with math and engineering like I could never imagine. It's not even how I think. I had to learn that in a month or two. I learned that about, I think, 2 or 3 months before I was doing it on my own. I've had to learn so many different things, and that's been hard, but it's taught me how to learn and adjust quickly. So that's one way that God prepared me for it. And finally, my real expertise is in curriculum development. That's my master's degree. That's what I've been doing for my careers. So when I step into something where all I have is a list of this is what they need to learn, and I have to find the resources and put them together, it takes longer, but honestly, that area is my comfort zone. So God has this thing that's impossible. God has already equipped me for it in ways that I didn't realize. And now I'm getting a vision for it. I'm starting to enjoy it and look forward to it. Still learning how to do what I failed in the past at doing, which is maybe compartmentalizing it. This weekend I'm working at home. I try to keep my work at school so I can come home and spend time with my husband. And on weekends I can spend time with my family. So when I'm working, I'm really working hard, but I'm learning not to carry that home with me, because I have to take care of myself. I have to do things I love. I have to spend time with people I love, or I'll burn out and I'll be no good to anyone. That's a free lesson for anybody who teaches, anybody who does something like that. But it reminded me of somebody who was called to do something way harder, way harder than teaching 94 middle schoolers. This job isn't even the hardest job I've ever had. Listen, I work with awesome people. I hope some of you are seeing this so you can see that. The administration is a wonderful administration. If you work with people who are supporting you and who care about you and who respect you, almost anything. I found almost anything. Almost anything's possible. The hardest thing, no matter what you're doing, is working in a hostile work environment. And this is the opposite of it. This is wonderful. So Moses, that baby was born, put in a basket, adopted by the royal family, grew up, tried to get back to his Hebrew roots by being among the Hebrew slaves, by among the Israelite Hebrew slaves, ended up killing somebody in his zeal and then fleeing. In his effort to get back to his Hebrew roots, he alienated his royal family. And because he killed an Egyptian, not even his royalty could save him, he fled, wandered through the desert, ended up being a shepherd. So his first 40 years, he's got like this silver spoon in his mouth. The second 40 years, he's either trying to survive in the desert or eventually landing on this job as a shepherd, still out in the wilderness. Shepherd. I would say that's kind of, maybe is that the substitute teacher of the Old Testament? It's certainly not a glorious job. Definitely harder work than a substitute teacher. It's not glorious. It might be something you do when you get away and you want to be anonymous. Certainly not a job that you would choose a king or a leader from. And yet God chose Moses as a leader. I want to read this story. This is New Revised Standard Version, which tends to be my preferred version. It says, this is Moses at the burning bush. Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led his flock beyond the wilderness, and he came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of a bush. He looked, and the bush was blazing, and it was not consumed. Then Moses said, I must turn aside and look at this great sight and see why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called out to him out of the burning bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, here I am. Then he said, come no closer. Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing, is holy ground. He said further, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I've observed the misery of my people who are in Egypt. I've heard their cry on account of their taskmasters. Indeed, I know their sufferings. And I've come down to deliver them from the Egyptians and to bring them up out of the land to do good and to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the country of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. I'm kind of impressed that I could say that. That's a lot of sites. The cry of the Israelites has now come to me. I have also seen how the Egyptians oppress them. So come, I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Okay, so talk about doing the impossible. Okay, so Moses, let's talk about his unqualifications. He's a shepherd. He only knows how to live in the wilderness. Oh yeah, let's add in there. He's a fugitive of Egypt, an outlaw, supposed to be dead. Alienated himself in a single day from both the Egyptians and his own people by killing that Egyptian. He's 80. He's an old dude. 80 is a long time to live back then. He's 80. Who lives to 80? And at that point, if ever somebody deserves a retirement, it's an 80-year-old, right? He's 80. He's an 80-year-old shepherd fugitive who, by the way, self-identifies as having a speech impediment. This is the person who's going to lead over 1 million people to Israel out of slavery. Now let's look at what this 80-year-old fugitive, speech impediment, outlaw, foreigner, shepherd is called to do. He's called to lead the Israelites against the most powerful person in the world at that time, the most powerful army up to that point at that time, without any military training, without a whole lot of leadership training, without any confidence or knowledge of the people. Oh, and by the way, did a little bit of research on this. Moses did a census of these people that he led out of the wilderness, exactly about a year and a month after he led them out, so it's about the same number of people. 603,550 men, 20 and older. That does not include women. That does not include children. That does not include one of the tribes of the Levites. 603,000 men, plus women and children. Ladies and gentlemen, Hebrews had a lot of children. We're probably talking about 2 million people here. At the very least, 1.5 million. 2 million people. He's called to lead 2 million people. He's has a hard time speaking, and they didn't have microphones back then. Can you imagine a stutterer who can't speak up? So let's see what his objections are. Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" Objection 1. I am nobody. And then this really is the meat of the matter. He said, as in God said, I will be with you. I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that is I who sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God on this mountain. The calling and the favor of God, I want to say this right, are the two greatest qualifiers for any task we undertake. The calling and the favor of God are the two greatest qualifiers. I'm not saying don't prepare for the things that you know you're supposed to prepare for. I'm not saying don't walk in faithfulness, because faithfulness is part of how you attain and keep the favor of God. Sometimes God favors you even when you mess up. But I'm saying if you want to walk in the favor of God, if you want to walk in the grace of God, obedience is a really good way to shore that up, to strengthen that up. But if you're being faithful, if God has called you to do something and you're being faithful to do it the best you can always trust God to fill in the gaps. So Moses is saying, who am I? And God's saying, no, that doesn't matter. I'm with you. Moses is saying, I can't do this. And God is saying, but I can. Number 2, but Moses said to God, if I come to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? Okay, so Moses is saying, I am nobody. And God is saying, but I'm with you. And Moses is saying, I'm coming in your name, but I don't know who you are. I don't know you, God. Sometimes God calls people who don't know him yet. Think about Paul. Paul didn't know Jesus. And he met him. And immediately, that's what empowered him. It wasn't Paul's background, because Paul was anti-Jesus for a while. Over and over and over again, there are these stories where, but I'm not a good enough Christian, God. I don't have enough faith. But I don't know who you are. And God said, I am who I am. And by the way, Yahweh, that word Yahweh, in Hebrew and often in a lot of the Aramaic nations, they still call it Lord. When you see the Lord and it's capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D in the Old Testament, that's actually Yahweh, because they respected the name so much they didn't want to say it. Moses did not want to look on his face. Remember, it hid his face. He hid his face from God's, even just the shining light that represented God's glory. He said further, thus you shall say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. So who do I tell him sent me? Tell him Yahweh. You know his name. I wonder if Moses said Yahweh or Moses said the Lord. I'm going to guess back then Moses just went ahead and said Yahweh so that they knew exactly who they were talking about. God also said to Moses, thus you shall say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever. You don't know who I am? Not an excuse. I'll show you. You shouldn't say to God, I don't know you, so I can't do this. You say to God, show me who you are so I can do this. That's the right prayer. The right prayer is never, I'm saying, man, do I need this for myself. It's never, God, I know you called me, but I don't want to do this, so I'm not going to. The right prayer is not, God, I'm not equipped enough to do this thing you've called me to do. The prayer is, God, equip me to do what you called me to do. And guess what, God? You're going to do it because you called me to do it. So may I be faithful. I just dropped a pen. All right, it's gone forever. And then a little bit later, and it says in verse 18, they will listen to your voice, and you and the elders of Israel shall go to the king of Egypt and say, the Lord, the God of Hebrews, has met with us. Let us now go a 3 days journey into the wilderness. Okay, so problem 1, I can't do it. Answer 1, I'm with you. You don't have to be able to do it. Problem 2, I don't know you, God. I don't even know what to say to the Israelites. Problem 2 answered, I'm going to show you who I am. I'm going to tell you what to say to them. So you're going to be okay with the Israelites. Bigger problem. God brings up the third problem. Verse 19, I know, however, that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders that I will perform in it. After that, he'll let you go. So problem 3, ill-equipped, poor at speech, foreigner, shepherd, fugitive, old guy is going up against the strongest leader in the world. Why would he do what I tell him to? And saying, oh, by the way, I want you to release 2 million of your servants for freedom. Biggest ask ever. with absolutely no authority to go with it, so he thinks. But wait, he'll not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So problem 3, this problem is too big. This mountain is too high. This wall is too wide. Answer number 3, God says, I'm bigger. I'm bigger. I was trying not to be worried about this long-term gig where all of a sudden I'm not a substitute but an actual teacher, at least till January, where I have all these things I haven't done before, where I'm not equipped, I'm not trained, and it's in the middle of the year with far more difficulties than if I were to start at the beginning of the year with training and with background and all that other stuff. And they're trying to help me, I'm not saying that, but so I resonate with all of these, that first thing. How am I supposed to do this, God? I'm not equipped for it. What Moses is saying, God's saying back to me, I'll equip you. I'm calling you, I'll equip you. Number 2, I don't know the material. And God's saying, I'll show you the resources. God will fill in the gap. And number 3, this job is bigger than me. This task is impossible. And God's saying to me, I specialize in that. I specialize in that. This job is big, I'm bigger. This problem is big, I'm bigger. Friends, when we look at our insurmountable problems, our insurmountable tasks, and we stare at them, we are going to be overwhelmed. We're literally going to hit a wall because this thing is, well, maybe not literally, this thing's going to be staring us right in the face. We won't be able to see past it. And I'll tell you, you're looking at the wrong thing. We're looking at the wrong thing because God is bigger. Don't look at the size of your problems. Look at the size of your God. I know that's a cliche. God's bigger than whatever it is. And if we're focusing on what we can't do, we will be absolutely right. And we'll be stuck. When we're focusing on what God can do, that doesn't mean that you're going to get everything you ask for. God could give me a $200,000 car. First of all, I don't need that. I don't want that. But even if I wanted it, God could give me that. That doesn't mean God is going to. But when God's asking you to do something, when you know it's in God's will for you to move in this or to get over this or for this to happen, we can be bold in faith. It says in 1 John 5, I want to say 14, 1 John 5 somewhere. This is the confidence we have before God that if we ask anything according to his will, we know he hears us. And we know that if he hears us, we have what we ask, whatever we ask for. So when God's calling you to do something, or when you're in the middle of a tough situation, you have an unbelieving spouse or child or anything like that, God will equip you for that. God will equip you for that. It won't necessarily be easy. Being in the wilderness for 40 years with a bunch of stiff-necked, obstinate ingrates was not easy. But it was a miracle, and it was doable, and it was a story for the ages. And it was an adventure. You better believe Moses is enjoying his rewards in heaven. But there's one more thing I want to point out. Moses was so focused at first on how ill-equipped he was, and how much he couldn't do it, and how he was the worst person for the task. Let me tell you, Moses, his own awareness of his inability is what made him a great leader. Not because he focused on that, but because he was forced to focus on God, because he knew it couldn't be himself. He knew it couldn't be himself. Now, there have been other leaders through history that started out like that. Solomon started out by saying, God, I need your help. I can't lead these people. Then he got cocky, and he got disobedient, and he pretty much messed it up. Because of his disobedience, the nation split. Then he came back to God in the end. So many leaders in Israel started with this, God, I need you, and ended with, look at what I did. Moses never got to that point. He made a mistake here or there, but he never got to that point. He was considered humble. Even when people rised up against him, he didn't say, God, strike them down. He would pray on their behalf, because sometimes our awareness of our weakness, I wouldn't say don't Don't say you can. Don't. I mean, I would say don't be hard on yourself. I'm not talking about that, but humility isn't saying I'm bad. That in some ways is idolatry because you're focusing on something other than God. You're God's creation. You're good. Humility is understanding your place under God's authority and power, and that's what Moses had. He had this dual awareness of I cannot do it on my own, and God can and will do it through me. That's humility. So I'm going to stay surrendered to the foot of the cross, and I'm going to know that I'm valuable, and I'm going to know that God makes me capable, and I'm going to know all of this, but I'm going to remember the source of where it comes from. That's what Moses had. I'll get practical too, though. There were some ways that God equipped Moses to lead these 2 million people out of the wilderness. Let's just talk about number one. He was a survivor. He knew how to survive. Even from an infant, he had that baby basket. And on top of that, he had, remember that thing where he escaped because he was a murderer? Guess where he had to go through? The wilderness. Guess where he had to survive? The wilderness. How he was brought up? He was brought up in a house of royalty, so he understood what authority was. I'm not saying he understood how to use it well, but he did have a background in knowing how to take authority, knowing there was I can't help but think there were some few skills he picked up growing up in the royal household about how to lead people, right? And now let's just look at first 3 verses. There's some hidden qualifications. Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led his flock beyond the wilderness and came to Horeb. 4 qualifications there. Did you see them? Maybe you didn't. I just saw them this morning. Moses was keeping the flock. He was a shepherd. Sheep are extremely dependent, extremely dumb, willful, obstinate creatures. There is a reason why the Israelites were called sheep. It's not that they lacked intelligence. It was that they were very stiff-necked. Not unlike many people today. I say to my students, I don't call people dumb, but people do dumb things. They did a lot of dumb things. I don't like to talk about people's lack of intelligence or anything like that because people are smart in different ways. Everybody has enough intelligence, as much intelligence as they need to function properly. And most have an overabundance of it. We just don't use it all the time. We do dumb things. The Israelites did dumb things. They didn't know how to be anything but dependent because they had been slaves. They didn't know how to be free. But God knew how to lead. I mean, of course God did. Moses knew how to lead sheep. So he learned about leadership of a nation. And by practical application, 40 years, he knew how to lead sheep. Of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. His father-in-law was a priest. Was not a priest of the Most High God, but we know that he was a good man. We know that he taught him, maybe not about God, but about leadership. We know he taught him about leaning into the divine. So even being a religious leader, he was under the tutelage of his father-in-law. It says later on, Jethro, his father-in-law, showed him how can you lead this 2 million, 1 million, 1.5 million, whatever it is, over 1 million people without getting burnt out. And he showed him about delegation. And so he learned from a godly man, and he learned from ungodly men. But he had a little bit of background in leadership, whether he realized it or not. And then he led his flock beyond the wilderness. So not only had he already been through the wilderness himself, he has some experience leading helpless people, well, animals, helpless beings, helpless creatures through the wilderness. I don't care how well educated you are, if you haven't done that yourself, you're not going to be as equipped as Moses was. And came to Horeb, the mountain of God. So he had a background in leadership. He knew how to lead the stubborn. He had an incredible mentor in Jethro, and he had experience in the wilderness. Sounds like qualifications to me. There an angel of the Lord appeared to him in the flame of the fire in the bush. He looked at the bush and was blazing, and yet it was not consumed. So at this point, Moses looked away afraid. He knew he couldn't do it. I'm sorry, that's a qualification. I'm not sorry. If you know you can't do it, that's a qualification. If you couple that with, and here's the big thing, verse 12, God said, I will be with you. That's it. God called him. God was with him. God had prepared him through some of the hardest things in his life for this very moment. So, really, what I'd like for you to take away today are two things. Number one, if God's calling you to the impossible, know you can't do it, and you step forward in faith anyways, get ready for miracles. If God says it and God calls you and you step forward in faith, it will happen. If you don't, somebody else will do it, you're going to miss the blessing. But understand, whatever you're in, if you're being faithful and it's impossible, you can trust God to fill in the gaps. It's really that simple. I don't think that qualifies for people who are just going out on their own. But if you're really trying to be faithful and you're walking in faith, that happens. Number two, God may have equipped you in ways you don't know. So really, the backup story of that is some of these things that you're going through that may seem impossible, difficult, let's just say pointless, you have no idea how God's using that to equip you for the future. All those different years where I had to just start a new career just to make the bills, learn something totally new, reinvent myself in a new way. I hate doing that. And I don't use the word hate lightly. I hate having to start something completely new again. I'd rather just continue in an area where I have a little expertise and experience. But all of that prepared me that I can do this without breaking down because I'm used to it. All of that having to learn things and be a quick study, it prepared me. All of that working with inner city youth in really difficult situations, it prepared me for the teaching right now. It's not as difficult. That aspect of it is not as difficult as some of the really hard jobs I've had. There's so many different things that have equipped me, not in the natural or not in the logical ways, but other ways. God is a recycler. So not only can God get you through whatever you're going through right now, He can use it. He will use it. It'll be part of your continued victory. It'll be part of your witness to help others. And it will be part of God's glory. Because that's who God is. He does the impossible and He uses the irredeemable. That's my God. Is He yours? Let's pray. Lord Jesus, can't believe I'm saying this after 3 weeks. Yes, I can. But I thank you for those impossible situations. I thank you for this job that is meeting our need. A job that you have now given me a vision for, one I could not have had without you. A job that you are equipping for, one that I could not be equipped with without you. Lord, we always need you. But thank you for the times that are so hard for us, but show us and remind us of how every breath is in your hand, Lord Jesus. May we honor you today. May we worship you today. For those whose heads are hung low in despair, in difficulty and guilt and shame, may you just raise their eyes to look to the God who is above it all, Lord. Whatever we're going through, whatever we're feeling, you're greater, Lord. And if we're going through something good, you're the creator, so may we look up to say thank you anyways, God. No matter what, you deserve the glory. And may you be glorified in everything. In your name, amen. Be blessed, my friends, and I pray a deeper victory and a broader peace for you.